We're here at the 2024 Budapest Forum, and joining me now is former member of Hungary's Parliament covering foreign policy and migration and foreign policy specialist at the CEU Democracy Institute, Zsuzsanna Szelényi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So we're here in Budapest in Hungary, and Hungary has, in the eye of the world, become increasingly anti-European. What's going on?
Well, Hungary is under Viktor Orban's leadership. I think we have to separate the country from Viktor Orban's government. Has a very special understanding of its existence, especially in the European Union, but of course globally. Orban is a very ambitious politician who is leading Hungary for 14 years now with a supermajority, which is a constitutional majority for one party, unseen in the world, or at least in the Western world, since the Second World War. So he is very powerful, and he can repeat this victory over time and time, partly because he can modify constitution all the time. Rules of the games of democracy basically are in his hand. So obviously Orban is playing more intensively at the international field. First of all, his ambition is to make the European Union accept that he is different. I think that's his number one motivation, because Hungary is not a real, well-working democracy for a while under his leadership. And obviously that creates a lot of tensions with partners, with allies within the EU. So there's a significant democratic backsliding in this country. Checks and balances do not work. There are rampant corruption by governing forces. So there are quite a lot of issues. And obviously Orban is a very autocratic type of leader. So the first, as I said, is that he really wants to accept the EU as a leader as he is. But he's more ambitious than that. He wants to change the European Union. He wants to play the big game. I think he's very unhappy to leading a small country, which does not have a very significant say in the future of Europe or the future of the world. And he regards himself as someone who can contribute to that. So he wants to challenge, he's challenging the EU partners because he wants to be seen, he wants to contribute to the discourse. But he does it in a very disruptive way. So he's often very provocative and typically presents an opinion which is different from the mainstream. This is one of his tactics he's experiencing or exercising for many years. And of course, this is quite disturbing in a community which is based on cooperation and compromise. Well, Orban is not a person of compromise. He is a leader who is leading by force. And this is what he's doing within the EU is like, I would say, like a small power politics.
Well, compromise, cooperation, those are some key fundamentals when it comes to the European Union. When you look at some of the actions of Orban, for example, the national card allowing Belarusians and Russians into the country, also the Schengen visa expansion, what do you make of moves like that? And do you think that Orban's own ambition threatens the security of the European Union as a whole?
So this recent step to let or provide Russian and Belarusian citizens easy access to Hungary, and of course through Hungary to the European Union, is I think one of his provocations. This is not an issue on its own. It's a part of a game with this Orban is playing with the EU, the European Union, and part of the conflict which his government created through not cooperating with other European countries in how the war in Ukraine is treated. Orban is presenting a politics which he says is Hungary's national interest, which is very much relying on Russian energy sources. And then he presents it like a pragmatic move, and he just doesn't accept the threat perception of the European Union and many other countries like Poland, for example, or the Baltic state, who regard Russia as a basic threat to their national independence. He doesn't do that. He doesn't worry that Russia would attack in any way NATO countries or European Union countries. So he believes that giving up all the relationships with Russia is a disadvantage, especially for Hungary, and I suppose probably also for himself, who developed this relationship with Vladimir Putin over the last 15 years. So since Orban is opposing many of the EU policies, for example, last year a big package for Ukraine's an aid package to Ukraine was held on because of Orban's behavior, and also he remained neutral in Ukraine's membership to the EU, which was also on the agenda. There were, of course, a retortion from EU countries. Of course, Hungary is suffering from a significant withdrawal of EU fundings for like 2-3 years. And of course, Orban wants to get this money. So he is pushing the European Union in various other ways. And this visa issue with providing easy or fast-track access to Russians and Belarusians is a pressure-making activity. This is how we have to see this. Of course, this is a problem for the EU because we are within the Schengen zone, free movement among the countries. So if Russian citizens without a significant security check enter Hungary in large number, they enter the EU. And of course, Hungarian government says that they are checking these citizens, but obviously this is a provocation and requires some kind of unified response from the EU countries.
Well, tell me about that in terms of a response from the EU. Does it need to do more? Does it need to sanction Hungary? Does it need to consider even kicking Hungary out of the EU? What does the European Union need to do when someone like Viktor Orban is provoking in this way and, as a result, providing a threat to the rest of the continent?
So the European Union is not a federal system. It has certain functions which it exercises together. And of course, in many other ways, countries have in strong sovereign rights to exercise. And this kind of half-baked nature of the EU make possible for a member state, or I would say a government of a member state, to behave in this transgressive manner, basically like a bully, imposing the EU under various challenges. The European Union should be creative and strategic as well. I mean, it's obvious that Orban's main goal is to receive the fundings because it's free money, it's for beneficiaries, it's always fascinating. It's an important contribution for economic development of those beneficiary countries like Poland or Hungary or many Eastern countries. Also, Hungary is suffering from economic crisis recently, so the money is important. And of course, until he gets this, he is provoking the EU and other places where he has leverage. So what the EU should do, I think it's a coherent strategic approach towards member states or member governments who are not cooperating is a challenge. It's a new phenomena, but if the EU wants to be larger, and it is coming, we are enlarging the European Union. It's going to be a more diverse group of countries. A lot of new challenges will arrive, and I think the European Union can use Hungary as a test case for what kind of challenges it can face in the future and prepare And I think in this sense, well, it's a bizarre thing, but Hungary is actually serving as a learning process for the future of the European Union.
You mentioned EU enlargement there, and there will be challenges with that. The more cooks in the kitchen, the more difficulty you can have negotiating different things. And like you say, Orban's moves are a challenge for the rest of the European Union. Where do you see the unity of the European Union, given we've seen Orban's moves here, bringing Russians and Belarusians into the Schengen zone, but then in Germany, they've now installed border checks to limit the number of people coming into Germany and keeping an eye on that. Is the EU united?
I think in many ways, yes. As I said, it's a kind of half-baked unity. It's a very unique creature globally. We are exercising something very special to work so deeply together, so many countries. And of course, more than 30 countries in the future will be even more complicated. So until the world is structured by nation state, such a big cooperation will also be challenging. So I think that what the European Union should do is obviously to find what its cores are, what are the core issues which are really expected to align by all members and allies. And of course, the EU should also figure out some of its internal sanction politics, which basically never happened before. It's also possible the future of the European Union will not be so closely related, and there might be various internal and external zones. I think 30 countries you cannot really govern in other ways. And obviously the Eurozone, which is the closest so far, will remain its core. And countries not member the EU, the Eurozone will be already a second layer, which is already the case. Also, European Union is facing huge global challenges. That's why actually we should unite more. It's not because of ourselves, so it's because the EU is in a global competition. Other countries are emerging, like China. Other groupings are created by other countries, and there is a more economic competition and a kind of competition for global influence. So we live in a broader transition where Europe should find its way. And I think...
Is Europe a step behind on that at the moment with the rising influence of the likes of China and Russia?
Well, it's up to where we see. Of course, the 20th century was very much a European era. Of course, it was more a US dominant era, but Europe was part of this winning Western part of the world, and it is changing. So in every part of the world should part its role here. If we want to be just, of course, a more equal globe is actually important, because we do have absolutely common problems like the climate change, which no country and not even a continent can manage on its own. So we live in a very complex relationship with each other. The globalization actually brought us together. So all these competitions should be come together with competition and cooperation. So it's a very interesting interplay, and the EU does not really find its way within this. And obviously, kind of leaders like Viktor Orban, who really wants to do this small power politics or using this kind of relative vacuum. But I'm rather optimistic that the European elite, political elite, understands that this unity is necessary. Actually, I believe Orban does also understand. I mean, Hungary on its own cannot play a different game, or at least not for long. So Hungary is also among the countries. There's no country in Europe which can play its game on its own. We're just all too small to that.
And just lastly, I mean, we're here in Budapest. You can hear the church bells ringing behind us. Is Viktor Orban, and you indicated it before, but
Is
he a bully?
Well, the ways how he behaves is like a bully. Yes, I think you find this kind of transgressive attitudes in politics oftentimes, typically not in Europe. But I think the EU should also, see this challenge. And I think that if we do not believe only the goodwill of allies and rivals, then we probably can better find strategies how to navigate in this complicated world with more successfully.
Former member of Hungary's Parliament, Zsuzsanna Szelényi, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And thank you for watching this feature interview on TVP World. Do stay with us. I'm Aaron Dahmen. Goodbye for now.